All right, everyone. Welcome once again to the Faces of Business. I'm your host, Damon Postolka, and with me today, I've got Andrew Lavoie. We're going to be talking about solving manufacturing hiring challenges. So we've got Andrew here from Next Level Group. Andrew, welcome.
Yes, thank you, Damon. I appreciate the invite here.
Oh, this is going to be awesome because I think hiring is on a lot of people's minds these days. And I think it's something that I just don't think you could talk enough about it, quite honestly, right now. So happy to get into this a little bit. Now, Andrew, you didn't start out though in recruiting or HR like a lot of people. Let's talk about your background and kind of how you got where we're at today.
I'll keep this short because some people will ask me, and I can talk a long time about this. But yeah, I mean, I years ago, my I guess equipment and trucks and cranes and just heavy equipment or heavy duty in general, agriculture and whatnot. So I'll kind of go down the path of dealerships. And I always, as a kid, I always loved being around machinery, and my grandfather owned businesses, and he was in the machinery world. And so I've always been really passionate about it. And so I early on in my career, I did own some forestry equipment. And I was young. I made some mistakes, and kind of went down the wrong path. And I asked for help, which was great. And then through that process, I learned that I needed to mature more, and I needed to go a different way. And I wanted to stay connected to that industry, so I went down the dealership path, and quickly got hired on with a company, and kind of went through the ranks with them actually quickly. And I went into management, and I was on 3 or 4 moves with the company. And at the time, I was 32 years old, and I looked at that, and I really didn't think that I wanted to continue on and continue the moves and all of that, like all the relocation that comes with being in
Yeah.
management and whatnot for the next 30 years. And that was the reality. Over the next 30 years, there's probably 4 or 5 more moves. So I wanted to stay, again, connected to an industry that I loved. And I wanted to kind of leverage all my relationships that I had built over the past, 10, 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I bumped into a gentleman that was in recruitment, and I was fascinated by it. I'm like, so I can help people at the same time and stay connected to an industry. So I started calling some of the competitors that I had been dealing with and whatnot, some friends, and quickly jumped in, like, full out. I really didn't know what I was getting into.
Yeah.
And so, I did hire a coach and some different things. And I did things the right way. I took it slow. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I didn't really think I was going to build a business. And then quickly I realized, whoa, there's an opportunity here to build a business. And that's kind of how I get into recruitment. And I'm proud to say that, right now, the clients that started with me 10 years ago, we're just over 90% retention rate from those clients that we've had for the last 10 years. So I'm pretty proud of that statistic for sure.
Oh yeah, no doubt, because keeping a client in any business for 10 years is tough, but in recruiting, with the changes in the job market, with changes in business and different requirements, it's got to be very challenging. Now, you're not in an area of the world either where you got tons of, do you recruit more for local or regional companies, or do you do national recruiting?
So we have a select client base that we deal with throughout Canada and into the United States.
Okay.
Actually, just last week, we placed somebody in Georgia. We've placed people in Hawaii, New York,
Very cool.
in Seattle. Actually, in Seattle, we have a
Nice.
couple clients there. And obviously throughout Canada. Canada is probably our biggest market. But you're right. Locally, not so much. Locally, we live on Prince Edward Island, which is a small island, maritime, Atlantic Canada kind of thing.
Yeah.
A population of 170,000 people. So.
Wow. That's cool. So when you talk about recruiting, you've been in this a little over a decade, and so let's think back. So we're in 2012 when you started this. So we're coming out of the coming out of the recession, you're a few years after that, things are starting to heat up again. What's a couple things that you go, man, I never thought this would have happened in the industry, in the recruiting, or what are some of the things that are really have surprised you?
Well, I guess there's a few things. Obviously the biggest is that, it went from a client market driven market to a candidate driven market. And we can talk maybe a little bit more about that in a minute. But probably the biggest thing is the shortage of skilled trades. And that probably surprised me the most, just because, you know, people now, they go to school, they want to do more. They're not only, I'll say, just getting a grade 12 education, but like they're going to school. And, you would think that skilled trades would be, it's a quick course. You become a journeyman quick. You get a chance to work with different companies and try different things and new skills and upgrade. So for me, that's been kind of an eye-opening experience, because when we first started 10 years ago, probably about 75% of our placements were down that skilled trades avenue. And now it's very few skilled trades, and it's more so on the leadership side or QA, QC, production type
Mm-hmm.
roles. Not so much on the skilled trades side. And we're okay with that now, but we've really had to adapt and kind of change our thinking on that for sure.
So when you say the shortage of skilled trades, do you mean that you have less roles to fill in it, or less people to fill roles that are open in it?
Less people. It's a bit of a I'll say a merry-go-round. So, somebody's here
Yeah.
one day and then they're over with this company the next day, and they're demanding, and it loops quite well into a candidate-driven market where, 10 years ago they would leave for a quarter or 50 cents, or
Yeah.
maybe just different hours or whatnot, or even a laptop, sometimes,
Yeah.
whereas now, they're asking for $5 and $6 more an hour at times.
Mm-hmm.
Or big pensions or whatnot, and people are thinking a lot differently now than they were before. But they want more on the skilled trade side than we've ever had. So, they want a bigger pension, or a better pension, or better benefits, or, Friday afternoons off, or just different things. It is about more money, but it's also more about, more at the end of the day in terms of the overall package kind of thing. So,
Okay. Yeah, because I know that you hear similar things across the U.S., but and North America. I mean,
mhm.
everywhere you hear this. So this is something I wonder a lot. Is it just because we've done a poor job of educating kids of what the skilled trades really are there for them? Because these are good jobs. These are good jobs. I mean, and I see, we've talked about before, my son just graduated from
Yeah,
college, but my son had friends that didn't go down the skilled trades route,
yeah,
didn't go to college, or even worse yet, dropped out of college, halfway through full of debt,
yeah,
and didn't even consider the skilled trades because no one had ever talked to him about what you can do as a pipe fitter, as a welder, as a electrician, plumber, whatever the heck it is.
yeah.
Do you think it's just that we haven't shown kids that option enough?
I think we're no longer in the high schools. We used to be in the high school. I know, like when I went through school, you'd see a counselor, you would see there'd be, job fairs or orientations or just different things. Like it could be anything from, I'll say, police academy to a ton of
Yeah.
skilled trades or different things. And we don't really, I can't speak for down in the
Yeah.
States, but I know locally we just don't see that anymore. And when we see people going to school here, or sorry, at the tail end of their school, they're already thinking, I'm going out west, I'm going to the oil patch, I'm going somewhere different. And they want the fly in, fly out roles. And it's hard to compete with that, because that's driving the local market up. Whereas,
Yeah.
before, and I'll just throw crazy numbers out, but before maybe it was $25 an hour, then people are going to the oil patch for say 75. Well, locally, you just can't compete with that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And even now, like we're seeing, those, some depending on the industry and whatnot, but like some of the skilled trades are, locally are, 30 to $38 an hour. And that's fine, but still at the end of the day, it still doesn't really compete with, the oil patch or some other places. Right. So the ones that are going through, that's kind of where we're losing them to. And again, I'm speaking locally, but there's certainly not enough people going into it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we see that that effect of the oil fields and the skilled trades is understated, I think, a lot, and you see it a lot more as you're talking there, but you just can't compete. I mean, because I've been I worked in the oil fields, and I know what those people can do if they work in the oil fields, because they go there, they work like heck for whatever it is, 2 or 3 weeks in a row. You don't take days off. You work as long as you can, as hard as you can, and you go home for a week or two or whatever the schedule is, and come back and do it again. And you make 30-40% more than you could at home.
Absolutely. And the other side of it too is we're seeing a lot more people go into programming and security, like, IT security and just IT in general. And,
Yeah.
we didn't really, like, growing up, we really didn't have as much of that. Right. So, and now that's offered everywhere. Right. So, and then you're competing with, turbine technicians, and it's branched out so much that the talent has thinned out, and everybody's fighting for the same talent. So it becomes an issue where, I'm working with you today, and then I'm over here tomorrow, and then over here the next day. So that's kind of where that market is really struggling. And I think that's why, when the manufacturing sector started calling and we started kind of going down that path, that was the timing was perfect for us to go down that path for sure.
So when you're talking with manufacturers today, what are some of the challenges that they're really having when you talked about, first of all, getting good people in the door, and then we'll talk about keeping them in just a minute. So getting good people in the door, even to come interview with them.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that they're really struggling with there? You mentioned pay, but that's just part of it.
Yeah, and when I'm recruiting or I'm speaking with people, I try not to talk about pay and whatnot. I mean, there has to be greater motivation. There has to be pain points on both sides, and it has to be truly a match or a marriage or whatnot. But I guess a couple of things is it's twofold, and I have to be careful how I say this. But when we're speaking with clients, it's a shift more so on the client side, because one of the things that when we sit down and we talk, it's about making sure you give us enough time that we can check those boxes that you need, but also is that perfect person out there. You may have to settle a little bit, but have you ever thought about changing the job descriptions a little bit? Or what about, this person may be really, really strong 3 out of 4 boxes, but maybe Sally over here is really good and she could maybe take that 4th box. And maybe we could change some job descriptions a little bit and maneuver around that. But also, the entry level people are not getting enough attention and the ability to groom, and because they want that perfect home run. And again, as I'm kind of saying that about the client, it also comes back to they're also understaffed. They don't have time to train. Right.
Yeah.
So it is it's a vicious circle of having that communication. What does this look like? Planning for the future. When we sit down with clients, we want to know what's your short term, what's your long term, what's your 1 year, what's your 3 year, what's your 5 year plan, because we want to truly be with you in a partnership where it's more proactive and less reactive. So if we're always on the reactive, you're maybe not going to have the best experience through that hiring experience. Right. So, we want to give you the best experience, but we want to be able to have time and provide you that perfect candidate that you're looking for. But one of the things is we find that there needs to be a little bit more time spending on the entry level, and how do we keep those people? Because some of the companies that I work with, they think that, well, we can't lose this guy at the top, but it's the guys at the bottom that's costing them the most money with all the turnover and all the training and all the every day. It's a revolving door, and you're at the guys respectfully, when I say at the bottom, I'm saying entry level positions. Those entry level positions need to have that opportunity to grow, and you need to treat that person with the exact same respect as you're treating the VP or whatnot. And that's where a lot of the times when I see turnover, I'm seeing turnover that's happening Friday because their manager is not around Friday afternoon and they can't get answers. They get frustrated. Well, why am I here Friday after? Why do I have to make these decisions on a Friday? Well, what's happening? Why am I going through this? So that's really where we're struggling, and maneuvering through all of this is coaching the client with pay attention to those guys on the floor. Allow them to have the answers that they need. Have that communication. Have those toolbox meetings. A Friday afternoon once a month or once a quarter, or, have awards, or, give them a little something, or a pizza party, whatever. But how can you be different in something that we've always done the same way, right? So, trying to, when we're selling something, one of the first questions I ask, if I interviewed with you today and you wanted to make me an offer, what would that look like? And then I'm like, okay, so that offer that you just presented to me is the exact same thing across the street, or it's the exact same thing over there. How can we sweeten this up a little bit? What makes you different? Let's think of it in championships, Stanley Cups, and Lombardi trophies, and all of that. Think about that. We've recently done a video on this. How do you become the Stanley Cup, or the champion of your industry, your sector, your region, your area, or whatnot, and what does that look like? What would that take? Sometimes it's not a lot, right?
Yeah. And I'm glad you went down this. I didn't even know we were going to talk about this, but you are 100% on. Is that the hidden cost of turnover at the entry level positions is crazy, and that turnover drives more people trying to cover more positions that are in higher levels, trying to cover their people that they don't have there to doing things, so they can't train new people. It makes it even worse, because this is the first time that I've talked to a couple people about this in the last few months, and you brought up the point that you're understaffed already, so it's really hard to train new people coming in, but yet those are the people that you got to train the most, because that's where your turnover is the highest.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
100%. And I didn't want to go in that circle, but we started down there and I just couldn't stop.
No, but you're right. You're right. It's like, and you wove in the other piece too, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but you've got a workforce coming to work for us now, or coming into these businesses now, that has different expectations than the Gen Xers, the millennials. We already know, we've been in that a while, but the Gen Xers before them, drastically different expectations. I mean, they don't want to be left to figure things out. They want someone to help them through it and do these kind of things. So when you were talking about the Friday afternoon decision with somebody being gone and someone having to make an uncomfortable decision or not know what they're doing, that's simply not a fact in their lives now, and they don't want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
So, how
we could talk for 2 hours on this one question.
No, I know. I'm just trying to, I had a whole bunch of questions here, but I'm thinking about different ones, because this is something I think, though, that once manufacturers figure it out, they can be that Stanley Cup manufacturer, the one where people come to work, want to come to work, when new people, existing people want to stay there, because I really think that you brought up a great point there. If they do that little bit of extra that can set them apart from everyone else, those problems go away.
Yeah.
Or can be severely mitigated. And if you could wake up in any business today, in the employee driven job market that it is, and you could say hiring people is not a challenge for me now, how much better would you sleep at night?
100%. 100%. And there's a piece that I haven't even spoken of about this is a lot of this turnover can be stopped if you have the right exit interviews. And a lot of companies think that an exit interview is just, you know what, it's fine. They've already given their notice. You know, we countered offered with matching the offer. They chose to go down a different path, but it's not about the money. Like when it comes to exit interviews, what we're trying to show our clients is that don't think of it in lines of matching the offer or what, like it's the intel you get from that. So, you know, maybe I leave and I tell you some uncomfortable things in that exit interview, but then maybe you say the same thing and then somebody else says the same thing. Maybe there's issues that they really didn't know that they had. And you can tell a lot from an exit interview. And we have, and I have to be extremely careful going down this path, but you know, we know of somebody right now, their exit interviews have extremely ramped up, and you wouldn't believe how many people that they have saved in the last 6 to 12 months. It's amazing to see, and they're really not doing anything any different. Is they're sitting down and they're listening to, well, I want more. I wanted to do this. You know, I don't have enough responsibility. Like what's your plan for me? And all of a sudden it just becomes a communication thing or some dialogue where they've had no communication. They've been on the floor for 2 years and there's been no communication. They've just been left there and whatnot. And all of a sudden it's like, now you're interested in where I want to go in the company and all of this, like, why haven't had this conversation a year ago or 6 months ago? So now all of a sudden it's like, oh, you know what? Like we can create a roadmap for you to get there. And here's how we're going to do it. So and then all of a sudden it's like, well, maybe I'm going to stay. And when I speak with somebody, and one of the things we try to train our team here is that if you have a counteroffer with one of your candidates, don't be upset, but figure out, did that client solve that pain point? So what if the pain point was, I don't know, benefits? Well, one of the first things I like to ask the candidate, well, that's fantastic. I'm glad that, you know what, I'm glad that you guys were able to compromise and you did this. And so did they solve pain point A, B, and C? Yes, they did. Okay, that's fantastic. On the flip side of that, well, how was your exit interview? Did they solve pain point A, B, and C? No, they didn't. They just gave me more money. It's like, whoa. Okay, so what happens in 6 months from now? So there's two different avenues with that, but that's one of the things that we try to work with our clients is that the importance of exit interviews are more important now than they've ever been to minimize your turnover, and especially on the entry level positions. On the VPs and whatnot, typically they're going because there's a different avenue or there's a different flame that they're chasing at that point. But for entry level positions, let's be honest, like that's what can save it, right?
Well, and you bring up such a great point with the exit interview. You may not be able to save the person you're talking to at that point, but there may be 200 other people out there that are working out there that you just found the idea that's going to save the 20 that are thinking about leaving next week. And that's the thing that I think is so powerful in what you're saying about the exit interviews is that you could be making the changes with everybody else that would stop it overall by understanding what's happening in an area or overall in the company, or, you know, you go through a half a dozen of those exit interviews and you could just figure out these are the 6 things we're going to work out, or they've got 1 or 2 that rise to the top that if we take care of these. But you're right. If people aren't leaving, you don't have to replace them.
Absolutely. Because one of the things I do find in entry level positions is that, and I'll just say, you know, let's say a production tech, for example, or packaging associate or something like that. Well, you know, if you're going from one company to another across the street for a packaging associate, typically the way that it works is that, okay, I'm missing this right now. This is my pain point, but over here they fix that. But also over here, sometimes it's creating another pain point that this company had already solved for you, right? So it's about having that dialogue and that communication and whatnot. So yeah, that's an important piece for our clients.
Yeah. Tavita says exit interviews are vital to getting a pulse on what may be broken within the culture of the organization that is driving the turnover. Yes. Exactly.
100%.
Exactly. And I never thought, definitely missed opportunities because, and so if so are you talking to your clients about doing exit interviews before people exit?
Absolutely.
I mean, because as
Absolutely.
you say that, I'm just like, why the heck aren't we just bringing employees in randomly? And okay, so first of all, just think of it as an employee. I'm an entry level employee, and hey, you need to go talk to the HR person. Oh no, what's wrong? And if it's a good experience, how awesome would that be for you
Yeah.
to help create the good flow in the business?
I'll
So
tell you something, and this is a personal experience, a little off topic for a second, but how important it is for toolbox meeting. They're called a million different names, but
yeah,
toolbox
yeah,
meetings, whatever. How important we used to, when I was back in the dealership world in management, we used to have it, but it was more of a, a joking around, have it fun, but it was just more of like, just let's release the tension. Let's just take 30 minutes and enjoy good conversation that we're not talking about work and get to know each other. And one of the things that I quickly found was I had one of my best guys on the floor. I noticed there was a bit of a change in behavior and I could never figure it out. And one day he came to me and he was to the point where he was going to give his notice. And like every other employer, I didn't want to lose that guy. I wanted to know what happened. And it was a Friday afternoon and we just started having conversations. And you know what his breaking point was? And he said, Andrew, I love working with you, but he said, I'm tired of being in the field and being asked for stuff and I can't give anything. He was like, our clients are spending thousands of dollars on repairs and thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars in equipment and this, that, and the other thing. And he was like, they asked me for something for free. He said, all they want is a keychain or a pair of gloves or a hat or something. He's like, I don't even care if it's a $5 item. And he was like, and you told me it wasn't in our budget this year. And I sat back and like what that did to me that day,
yeah.
you have no idea. Like I couldn't
That's
believe that
awesome.
something so like I was going to lose my
Yeah,
best guy
yeah,
over this. Like I'm like
yeah.
this cannot happen. And I brought that following Monday. I brought everybody in, and we had an amazing conversation. And I'm like, guys, like I can't do this without you, and vice versa. And like your input and your ideas are more important than mine. You guys
Yeah.
are in the field. You're on the shop floor. You're doing this. Your interaction is more important with the clients than mine is. How can we write this? And the stuff they started sharing, we quickly and I actually I have the word right over here. One of the things that we did that year in the next 18 months, we went from one of the bottom shops, we went to the top, and we received an award for it. And it wasn't anything I did. It wasn't
Yeah.
anything, it was over a three at the time, $3.50 pair of gloves. And
Yeah.
I was able to keep that guy. But like, what happens if I would have lost him over $3.50? Wouldn't have made any
Yeah.
sense, right? Just
Yeah.
just because we didn't communicate.
That is such a great story and such a great point because it's the little things that matter in most cases.
Yeah.
And sometimes I even look at before I've had people in situations where they would quit. Well, sometimes it's like I never get to see my kids' baseball game or hockey game or whatever they want to see because their shift coincides with it. If you just let them once a month or every other week or something, get a couple hours, it could be the difference between, like you said, losing a good employee or not. And I look at manufacturing now where you work, and I think that, and this is something I did want to talk about, is if we really rethink the way that we run manufacturing companies, and I'm talking about production, because we
Mhm.
all know that we can do the remote in some of the office areas and some of the other ancillary places that aren't there touching things, right, and moving product. It's those places, though, where we're touching product, that if we can be more flexible and give people, within reason, obviously, but if you can let somebody take some time off and somebody else fill in and do a back and forth with similar work people that are working, I think that is like the panacea of giving people the flexibility to really keep them around. Because if
Mhm.
I see anything, as you look at the younger workforce, and I have no frame of reference, I haven't hired this, but just raising and being around kids, is the flexibility that they like to have.
Yeah.
And if you can give a younger person, and even think someone with kids, for some reason they've got to go to a doctor's appointment with a kid or something like that. And if they could switch with a different worker on a different shift for an hour, what's a big deal? If they can schedule it, because we get so used to, hey, you work from 12 to 8, you work from 8 to, whatever it is, or 12 to whatever that is. And, you get these places. And I just think this flexibility and really rethinking. I heard a manufacturing company here in the Northwest that was putting in childcare.
That would be huge.
How big a deal is that?
Yeah.
Even if you could just say, I mean, we got big buildings, right? You tell me you can't put something in that's going to, even if you had people that were working a 4-hour shift and you could take care of the right worker, the right situation, the right stuff, a couple people, take care of 10 or 12 people. What could you do? How could you diversify your workforce? I mean, it's like, we gotta go beyond the person that's going to be there every single day for 8 hours or can live a life that has no flexibility in it. I mean, I just think we're at that point, and I don't think we're going backwards.
Yeah, you're right. And really quick, one of my clients, one of the things that I pride and I give them a pat on the back for is that recently they, as far as training, they don't do it at the shop anymore. And we sat down and we looked at this or at the facility. And so we sat down, we looked at it and said, well, how can we be a little bit different here? Because we're losing two ways. We're, the employees doing training at the facility. So you're paying for that employee to be there. But beyond that is we have to think that's lost revenue, that's lost time. And then also on the flip side, what if we gave them a bonus for finishing a module at home? Or what if you paid them 2 hours for that module at home? One of the things that he started finding at Christmas this year, everybody wanted to do training at home because they wanted additional money for Christmas. So November, December, everybody was pounding through training at home because it was additional money. And now that's one of our selling features when we speak with candidates, and they're like, wow, I get paid for training at home. Like, that's a real thing. So so they like that because they have that opportunity. It doesn't seem like a big thing because you're going to get paid for it anyway, but it's just something simple that, that they get extra money. Right. So,
but you're right. It's lost productive time at work. And if you can do the training at home, it's a win-win right there.
Absolutely.
But those are the kind of things, even when you talk about, I interviewed Lisa Ryan. She's in the US. She speaks with a lot of manufacturing groups about retaining talent. And she was talking about the experience, changing the experience from the time you decide to hire somebody until their first step into your facility is huge. And she talked about, sending them a gift bag or a welcome packet or something like that, and how big a deal that is, and how to work through that. So we'll come to that, because I think that's cool. But you were talking about something before we got on that I want to go over, because I think this is really important. And that's when you're working with clients, you walk through the process with them. Let's talk about what you're doing there, because I think that is really cool. We'll talk about connecting people to the business and things like that, but talk about walking through this overall candidate process.
Yeah. Well, when we sit down with our client and we schedule an interview kind of thing. So one of the things that we'll ask is that, it's a map of the facility. So we'll have everything kind of prepared for our candidate. And it could be a map of the facility, map of the parking lot, or whatnot. But we want to know what does that experience look like? So if I show up at your facility, for a 9 o'clock interview, walk me through that. So when I drive in the parking lot, is there a guest parking lot? Do I park up front? Which door to go in? How many doors do you have? And it's funny because I get the same reaction a lot of the times, especially with somebody new. It's like, well, what do you want to know all that for? Well, I don't want to have somebody show up 15 minutes early to be 15 minutes late sort of thing because they went in the wrong door or they had to fill out forms or whatever. So when one of the things that I like about this is when we start walking through the process with our clients, they quickly find, well, we have a hole here. Oh, well, we don't really have a plan there. But really what that process is that it's a comfort thing for everybody, right? So, and what I mean by that is that right through from, parking your car, which door you go in, any paperwork you have to fill out, who are you going to ask for, how many people are in the meeting. And that's critical because
Yeah.
one of the things that some of our clients have done in the past, they've scared candidates off. And what does that mean? Well, they thought they were meeting one candidate or one interviewer, and there was 4 people in the room. Well, it was intimidating, right?
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
now it's like, okay, so you're meeting 3 people, and this is what this looks like, and then here's the process after the fact. And being in a candidate-driven market, that's critical, and it's not critical on my end, but it's also critical on your end to share those steps after the interview is over with that candidate. And what does that look like? So that when they leave there in a candidate-driven market, you have one kick at the can in most cases to figure out how you want to attract that employee. And the other thing is that I've kind of skipped over was that if I'm the interviewer, those days of I've got an interview in 20 minutes, so I've got to run downstairs and I'll take this resume with it and we'll kind of zip through it. Those days are over. It's how can I speak with that employer or that prospective candidate without even looking at the resume. So what are some of the questions? So we actually will provide some of our clients different questions based on the resume and the strength of the resume. And what I mean by that is that we'll look at it from cultural fit, behavioral, situational type questions. Those 3 types of questions are critical because I may have to ask you all kinds of situational type questions, but the next person, maybe it's all cultural or whatnot, right? So those types of questions you have to think about it in advance. You're not just running to the interview because much like we used to get the calls from a client, well, that candidate wasn't ready. Well, he didn't know anything about our company. Well, now the true is also in reverse. What did you know about the candidate?
Yes.
Right. And when they leave the site, how was that experience? Where they walked to the door? Who brought them to the door? What was the conversation? How was that left? What are the next steps? How soon are you going to be reaching back to the candidate or us to reach back to the candidate? And we have to stick to that. So, those days of, okay, we need a week to 2 weeks to speak with somebody else. No, that candidate's gone. That candidate's gone.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So it's really that whole process needs to be revamped from the client side of the things, from the side versus the candidate. So, yeah.
That great stuff in there because you brought up so much. I was thinking, listening as you were talking about it, everything down to the interviewers going in there. If you're going to have more than one person in the interview, you better know, hey, you're going to ask about this kind of stuff. I'm asking about this kind of stuff. They're going to ask about that kind of stuff. And we need to, it's a completely different interview process, isn't it? Because you said you have to be able to attract the candidate. So you're really, yes, we have to assess skills fit for the position, but you're also then have to go, okay, and how can we differentiate ourselves and how can we ask the right questions for them to tell us what will make them want to come here and then communicate that.
Absolutely. So as your recruiter, so if you're manufacturing company ABC today or pharma company and you're dealing with an external recruiter, it's like, if I don't see the name on the top or any of that history or dates or any of that, if I really kind of know their last 3 jobs and kind of what they've done and what they've accomplished, the recruiter needs to be able to supply all the intangibles as well and the tangibles, right? So what does this look like and what does this hand look like? And when they supply that portfolio or that case to the client, they need to be able to look at that and say, okay, based on what I'm seeing, I'm curious about this. I'm curious about this, but also here's the environment that they're going to be working in. And this manager that they're going to be working for has this type of personality. but they're also reporting to this person 20% of the time, and they have this type of personality. What is the mesh? What does that look like? And how do we mesh that all together? And those are the types, when I talk about cultural or situational,
Oh yeah.
we need to have that plan put together before we even think about bringing this person into the interview. So it goes both ways.
That's incredible.
The recruiter has to do the job, and the hiring managers have to do the job.
You in a minute there, 40 seconds, whatever that was, you explained how the recruiter can make their money over and over and over, because seeing that picture, understanding what we need to find out about that candidate based on your conversations with them prior to them coming to the company, based on what you see in their resume, based on what you know about the company, and then your situation with your long-term candidates like that, you or clients, you get to understand the clients well enough so that you can say, you know, Damon's going into this position, and I know here's the two supervisors that are going to be there. These are the things. I mean, it was incredible, man. It was incredible, really, what you just said, because that is how you get the right people in the right place and really understand if we're hiring getting a good fit between the employee, the potential candidate, and the employer. That's awesome. Awesome. Gee, if people weren't listening to that, they should stop and go back and listen to that part. Because if your recruiter's not doing that, that's, I mean, it's finding people. That's one thing, but giving them the insight and what you think they should, the employer should be asking to make sure it's a good fit. That's valuable.
Yeah.
That's real value there.
Like even from the recruiter side, and I'm not, I don't want to speak for recruiters or whatnot, and I'm not selling anything here, but I'm like, well, one of our strategies is, so let's say, Damon, we're moving you today across the country, for example. And so when we kind of interview prep you and we go through that process with you, you know, we want to make sure, you understand everything there is about the company. You have information on their website, some of their jobs, some of their changeover, some of their stats, retention, turnover, type of department. If that position is turned over multiple times, or is it a replacement? Is it an addition? What does that look like? Is there responsibilities? Is there opportunity for growth? Then we go through and say, okay, what if in order to I'll say to Prince Edward Island. So in order to relocate to Prince Edward Island, what is it that will be important to you? Well, you know, do you like sports? Well, if you do, okay, well, you know, I need to make sure that you have, you know, we have a hockey team here, or university, or you have kids that are going to university. Well, we have a great vet school, we have great culinary, but maybe we don't have kinesiology, for example. So all of these things are important to put those links, because you're not going to, as a candidate, you don't have the time, and you're probably not going to go searching for it. And I know people may beat me up on that, but it's the truth, because I'm coming out of a job or my work today, and I'm jumping into an interview, and I'm somewhat prepared, but I don't know necessarily how to prepare, right? Because the reality is that I don't need to do a lot of preparation, because if you don't make me an offer today, the guy across the street is going to make me an offer. Sorry for saying that, but right now that is a reality in the candidate driven market. So if we were to kind of back that up a little bit, if we put everything right there for you, from, you know, what are your recreational type activities? Do you like beaches or golf or hot sport, whatever,
whatever it is.
So we put that in there. And then from there, we will also make sure, we'll tell the client, we've done this. You can ask them some questions on that to make sure they've done their due. And even real estate agents, we put 3 real estate agents, we put an accountant, and we put 2 lawyers in, and even right down to that. And we want the client to ask them if they've done their research. And that's an important piece both ways. But that's an opportunity for you to really get to know each other and ask about the area and the company and all that stuff. But it is a two-way street, but the recruiter needs to go that distance for sure. And there's a lot more to it than that, but they need to.
No, you make good points though too, because that could be in a candidate driven market, that could be the separator, right? If my kid's got dreams of being an NHL hockey player, and you've got a good program in the area where you're at and the other place doesn't, you might be the one that wins.
Absolutely.
And these kind of things are very important, and making it easier, because especially moving, I've done it a couple of times, and moving across the country or across North America is no small feat in both just the difficulty in doing it, but then the toll it takes on a family, at least in the initial. So yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome advice. So people listening can get some real tips on what they want to find in a recruiter, or they can contact you when we get to the end. We'll talk about this. Tavita says she is loving this guy. I do too. And I knew Andrew was going to be good after our conversation prior to this. And because you're also part of Manufacturing Masters, which is where we originally met. And if you're in manufacturing, you know what Manufacturing Masters is, I think you should look it up. So there's a lot of good people in there. So this is what we're getting. Oh God, we're at 45 minutes already. And I'm like, oh man, we could talk a long time on this. So let's wrap up with this. We're going to talk just a couple things. We talked about this a little bit, but what do you think some of the things that the companies that you see that are really doing a good job of making change, what a couple things that you see them do that maybe some others aren't doing that they should really consider?
Well, that's a bit of a loaded question for sure. There's a lot of different, like, people are just trying to be creative right now, and they're trying to find their own way. And again, it's what separates you. It can be the smallest things. It can be,
Separating.
like, I have one client came to me today and they said, Andrew, we really want this person. If it makes sense, we know that they're an active person, and we'll give them a gym membership. Well, it's little things like that, but it's not just the one-offs. It's like, how can you change the culture? How can you change? Because if you do that for me today, that I'm going to tell more people about that. Well, if you're athletic or whatever, you're gonna take advantage of that. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just one thing. And again, it's not all about money, but it's about sitting back, communicating, having conversation, and trying to be proactive, and really listening to entry level positions, because a lot of entry level positions can cost a lot of money really, really, really quick. And that can be the stall in your production, because let's face it, the entry level positions, that's where your production's coming from. Usually not at the top. It's usually your entry
Mm-hmm.
level. So, have regular conversations, toolbox meeting, a pizza once a quarter, an award or something, safety award, whatever it is. But just, what is it that's going to separate little, like, small wins? That's the best way that I can say it. You don't need to, have a home run every single time that you want to change something, but it's about that small win. But one of the things is that when we're speaking with the team, it's that, just look at the full picture, and listen to staff. They're going to talk to you. And usually if one person says it, everybody else, or a lot of others, are going to say it, or some others at least are going to say it. And then you can start to sift through some of that, because maybe not all
Yeah.
employees are going to say everything. But you're going to quickly find out a lot of information really, really quick from the floor. And that's where a
Yeah.
lot of your information and your small wins can come from. So
Yeah. Awesome.
I'm trying to
Awesome
be
advice.
politically correct on that one.
Awesome advice. Awesome advice though. No, it is. You have to listen to people and really ask. And I think that's honestly in business, in the employer driven markets, it's we're doing what we need to do to get what we need. And now the tables being flipped as they are, you really, as you said, how can you change to be more attractive to people to come to work where you're at? What are some of the things you can do and just attract more of the people that you want by getting better? And it comes from listening to them, the people you've got, and maybe making some changes to make it better for them and keep it
Or
going.
even, like, from a candidate side, the small win for them could be a little, like, my job is, I don't know, let's say I'll say packaging, for example, because that's an easy one. Well,
Yeah.
maybe I want to, maybe I want to run a machine, or maybe I want to learn more about the automation process or whatnot. So, if I'm sitting there doing packaging for the next 2 years, I'm probably going to get bored. And nothing against packaging. I'm saying in general, doing the same thing with my hands every single day.
Yeah.
So it could be the small win of having the conversation. Well, I have an interest in Sally's position over there. Maybe, for a few hours a day, could we just kind of trade off just to wake up, or just different set of eyes or whatever, like little things like that. Like, it will go a long way. And the other side to that is actually one of my pharma companies, they actually trade some of those positions, not too often, but every now and then they'll swap positions a bit. They say that it refreshes the candidate. Believe it or not, it's a refresher for them.
Yeah. Yep. That's a good point, because moving around and flexibility and changing up the workforce, because what'll happen is, and this happens notorious for happening in accidents, is you can work around very dangerous equipment and you don't realize, because you can move this big thing with your finger that it weighs 2 tons, and if you get pinched between something, it's going to crush you. It's and people see that, and they understand that when they go to work in other places and come back again. Otherwise, you don't get so familiar. But anyway, Andrew, it's been awesome having you here today. We could go on a lot longer about this, but solving manufacturing hiring challenges, you've given a lot of gold, a lot of gold advice here. Differentiate yourself, make yourself better for people to come to work there. Take care of your entry level people, because that turnover is eating you alive. And then make sure you're talking to your people and asking them what's going well, what's not going well, and make it better for them. So
absolutely. And think situational, behavioral, and cultural questions during your interview process. It will help.
Awesome stuff. Thanks so much for being here. I want to thank Davida. Thanks to you for the comments. Mike, for being here. Thanks so much. It's just been great having you today, Andrew. Oh, and you were on target there.
Thank you. You're being generous. Thank you.
All right. Well, today we're talking with Andrew Lavoie, Next Level Group. He's got an HR recruiting and consulting company. People can connect with you on LinkedIn, Andrew. Is that a good place?
Yes,
to
absolutely. Yes.
Or
absolutely.
Next Level Group. And what's the website?
NLGRP.com. So NLGRP.com, or on LinkedIn.
Okay. All right. Well, and your link will be in our show notes and be on our blog post when this comes out. But thanks everyone for being here today. Thank you, Andrew. And we will be back again later this week with another show.
All right. Thanks, Damon. Thank you to the guests.